Hello friends, welcome to SahuStudies. In this video, I am going to discuss about difference between reduce by key and group by key in PySpark. So let's discuss about what is PySpark, what is a reduce by key. So reduce by key is a transformation function. It is a wider transformation function. So whenever we want to do any kind of a transformation over RDD, we can use reduce by key function. Reduce by key is a transformation function, and this is the wider transformation function. What does it mean? It means that data will going to suffer across different partition over network. It is used to merge the value each key. It is associate. It uses associative reduce function on PySpark RDD to merge the value of each key. So let's understand this in detail. So suppose we have a RDD. That RDD present in the form of key and value pair. Whenever we are going to use reduce by key, then what it will going to do? It will merge the value of each key. And how the merging will going to take place? So reduce by key uses associative reduction function to merge the PySpark RDD to means whatever the value which is present in the RDD, it will going to use associative reduction function to merge the value each key in the RDD. It is a wider transformation function, hence suffers the data across different partition. It operates on pair RDD, that is key and the value pair. As I told you that if a transformation is wider, then the shuffling of the data will going to take place across different partition. And this reduce by key always works on pair RDD. Pair RDD means the data is stored in the form of key and value pair. It is useful when there is a requirement to perform aggregate function on the values which are associated with the key. So suppose we want to perform any kind of aggregation function, aggregation such as a sum, count, mean, max, and if you want to perform on the key label. So what I means to say key label, that it will going to merge all the value based on the key. Like so suppose like IT is one key, the value is 4. Then marketing, the value is 10. So what I mean to say, this is the key and this is the associated value of this IT. This is market, this is the associated value of the key. So suppose if you want to do any kind of aggregate function over the values which are associated with key, then we can use reduce by key function. Aggregation could be mean, max, count, sum, like this. One of the main advantage of reduce by key is that it reduces the amount of data that's need to be shuffled and stored in the memory. I will discuss in this point. Okay, so this to let understand this point well. Why the amount of data will going to reduce when the shuffling operation will going to happen? So what reduce by key does, it first apply the aggregation function locally. What I mean locally? Locally means per partition. So suppose the data is stored in the 10 partition and we want to do a aggregation function such as sum. So first it will sum all the value which is present in a different keys and get a result. And when all partition has a single result, then shuffling process will going to happen and it will collect all the results of the different partition to give the final result. So suppose in the row partition, the amount of data is 10 MB. When aggregation function applied for each partition, then the data will reduce to, so suppose 1 KB, because there is a one data point, it will be there after the aggregation. So from 10 MB to 1 KB. So there's a lot of data is get reduced when aggregation process applied locally. And if the data size is very small, it will going to store in the memory well, and when shuffling will going to start, the shuffling will be very fast because the data is very small. One is one of the main disadvantage of reduce by key is that it requires the reduce function that is associative and cumulative. So whenever the we are going to do any kind of a transformation, so the reduce by key going to use reduce function that is associative and cumulative. And if the function is not associative, aggregate function is not associative and cumulative, then reduce by key will not going to perform at that point of time. Let me explain this reduce by key with the help of this pictorial representation. Consider this is the one partition which is sitting in one executor. This is another partition which is sitting in another executor, and this partition is sitting on the another executor. So here there are two data, right? So suppose we are doing a aggregation function, that is the sum aggregation function. So first aggregation function will going to apply on the each partition. So what it will going to do, it will merge all the value per key. So here is the one value that you can able to figure it out that the data is merging, okay, per key. So this is the key and this is the value. So this aggregation is happening locally. Here also there's a two data points for key A, two data points for key B. This merging is happening locally. So this is the final result. Key A has a value 2, key B has a value 3. Here key A has 3 value and key B has the 3 value, and the data point which has key 1 and key B, each and every data point has value 1. So some aggregation is taking place locally, that is in this partition only, and it merges the value per key. So the value of A is 3, the value of key B is 3. Once the results gets generated for each and every partition after the aggregation, here the aggregation is sum, then the shuffling process starts. So these two partition gets created, and let's discuss from where this value is coming. So this value, the A is equal to 1 coming from this partition. This is the result of association, some aggregation. You can say some aggregation which has taken place in this partition. This A2, this is coming from here. This is the result of some aggregation which has been taken place in this partition. And this A3 is coming from here. This is the result of some aggregation which has been taken place in this partition. This B is coming from this partition B1, and this is the sub aggregation result of this partition. This B2 is coming from this partition. This is the result of some aggregation which has been taken place in this partition, and B3 is coming from here. So this is the sum aggregation for the value key which has been taken place over this partition. And once the data shuffles and this partition gets created, then again some aggregation function is happening on top of this partition, and we can see this is the final result of A is equal to 6, and this is the final result of B B is equal to 6. So first the sum aggregation is happening locally, then suffers the data, and again the sum aggregation is happening to give the final result. This is the way reduce function is working. Let's talk about group by key. So group by key is a transformation function, and it is a wider transformation. So the function is wider transformation means shuffling will going to happen within different executor over the network. So it perform aggregation such as count, sum, mean, and max. So whenever there's a requirement to perform this kind of aggregation, we can use group by key. It shuffles the data across different executor when the data is not partitioned on the key. So this is a wider transformation, and if the data is not partitioned over the key, then a lot of shuffling process will going to happen. It takes key value pair as a data input, groups the value based on the key, and the return the pair of the RDD. So whenever we are going to use group by key, it will going to take as a RDD in the form of key and value pair as an input, group the data based on the value on the key, and return the pair ID. And the pair ID has the key and the aggregated value. It performs very costly operation, and it's consume a lot of memory if the data is very big. So it is a wider transformation, right? And the shuffling of the data starts from the first stage of the transformation. So the raw data is itself very big, and whenever Spark started shuffling the data on the raw data, the data is very big. It consumes a lot of memory, and the shuffling become very slow. It performs better whenever you want to group the data based on the key, but do not want to perform any aggregate function on the value. So this is very important. So suppose there is a scenario where we want to group the data only based on the key, but we don't want to do any kind of aggregate function on the aggregated value per key. So if you don't want to perform any kind of aggregation value over the key, then the performance of group by key will be very high. One of the main advantage of group by key is that it is very simple operation and does not require any complex logic. So this is the one of the advantage, because the group by key is very simple. It don't require any complex logic to group the value of the key, and the operation is very simple. This is one of the main advantage of group by key. The main disadvantage of group by key is that it will be inefficient with a large data set, because it suffers a lot across the network and store in the memory. So as I told you that it is a wider transformation, and the shuffling starts from the first stage of the transformation. So what does it mean? Means row or data started shuffling, and if the size of the data is very huge, whenever we are going to shuffle it, first it needs to be stored in the memory. Size will be big, memory will going to occupied, then shuffling process become very slow. This is the one of the main reason why it is suggested that if you want to do any kind of aggregation function over a pair RDD, do not use group by key, use reduce by key. So let me explain this group by key with the help of a picture, right? So this is a one partition, this is another partition, this is the third partition. So at the very first stage, no, the shuffling starts. So this value, this A1 is coming from this partition, this A1, these two records are coming from this partition, and these three records A1, A2, and 3 are coming from this partition. Same for the B, this B1 is coming from this partition, this B1 and B2 is coming from this partition, and this B1, B3, these three records of the B key is coming from this partition. So this raw data will going to shuffle. So if the data is very big, then this shuffling process will going to take more time and it will consume more space, and the shuffling process become very slow. And when the shuffling has completed, then it uses the aggregate function. So here we are just doing the sum aggregate. So here what it is doing, it is just summing up all the values which is present for the key B. So each has value 1. So if you just aggregate it, it becomes A6. Same goes with B key. So what is the difference then? Right. So reduce by key is suitable for cumulative and associated reduction operation on the value. So whenever if there is a requirement to do aggregation which is cumulative and associative, then reduce by key perform better. It perform a logical operation on the each partition before shuffling. As I told you, all the aggregate function perform locally, means it perform on the each and every partition before the data is getting shuffling. This is one of the major advantage of reduce by key. So if the data is very small, then it requires less memory, and it is very limited it provides very limited flexibility, as the reduction function is fixed. So if you want to do any kind of a custom aggregate function, no, then reduce by key will not going to help you out. It provides better performance due to the local aggregation. Local aggregation means first data is aggregated on per partition label, and then it is aggregated. Then it aggregates all the result which is present in the different partition to get the final result. This is one of the other major advantage. Local aggregation, data will become very small. It will going to fit into the memory, and the shuffling process will become very fast. Let's talk about the group by key. This group by key value which are associated with each key into the iterable collection. So whenever there's a requirement that we are going to group a key into the iterable collection, then we need to use group by key function. So how it will going to present? So suppose there's an IT key, and it will going to create a set, and the values like 1, 2, 10, whatever the value it is present for the each data set of the IT key, it will going to store in the form of like this. So if there is a requirement to make this type of data set, then we should use group by key function. It shuffles all the values across the network. It leads to the more data movement. As I already discussed, that shuffling process in the group by starts from the first stage of the transformation. So we are just shuffling the raw data, and the raw data is generally used. That's why it required a lot of space in the memory, because to shuffle the data, first the data loads into the memory, and then it shuffles across the different partition over the network. That will going to lead a lot of data movements, and the performance become very slow. All the values are stored in the memory. That's why large data set could be very memory intensive operation. We have discussed right now. It provides limited flexibility in the custom aggregation function. So if you want to write a custom aggregate function with the group by key, no, it provides a very limited flexibility, because this is very easy to use, and it requires it don't require a complex logic to perform over the aggregation function. That's why it does not provide more flexibility to write the custom aggregate function. For the large data set, the performance would be very poor due to the data movement across the network. As I told you, if the data will be used, the data needs to be stored in the memory, and then from the memory, data will be shuffled across different partitions over the network. So if the data will be moved, it requires a lot of memory, and the shuffling process become very slow. So this is one of the major disadvantage of the group by key. So in this video, we have seen what is the difference between reduce by key and group by key. Thank you. If you like content of my video, then please subscribe my channel, like it, comment on it, and press the bell icon to get notification whenever I add videos.